Okay, are you spending your Sundays, evenings, or afternoons updating holiday spreadsheets, or even potentially chasing sick notes or other bits and pieces related to your staff? Well, if you are, here's the thing: you're not alone. But the good news is what if I told you that there's one simple tool that could help you save an extra day and a half every single week? So here it is. Let's talk about HR software and why it is the best productivity hack that you've never fully considered right now in your business. Let's hit this. Okay, everyone. So if you haven't met me before and this is your first time here, my name is Mike, the company is Cavell, and we are a small business that helps small businesses, especially in health and social care, cut through the HR chaos, stay together and compliant, and build high-performing cultures and high-performing teams. Today, I'm breaking down how HR software can help transform your business, save you time, and reduce your personal stress. Yes, your stress. Now, the other thing I want to touch on quickly here as well is this is our podcast. So if you are here listening to us through the podcast, you can download us from wherever you do get your podcasts. But we are also recording this video, which is on our YouTube podcast, and it is also attached to our articles and blogs. So if you are here reading the article and blog, the blog is below. Please go ahead and read and digest that. There's more information in there than I give away in the video. If you are listening to us through the podcast or watching us on YouTube, the Book of You, you can come through and click on the link in the description, and you'll be able to get these articles, updates, and other whizzy little bits that we're giving out at the moment in time, and get them ahead of the game. So they'll be getting them here first. And you'll be able to get those articles as well. So click on that link and get those and our excellent guide as well, which will be available to you. So let's get on with this. So why is it that HR admin is holding you back right now? So I've got to tell you, with clients, we have clients on many different spectrums on our list. Some that are really great and have been really intuitive with HR information systems. So HRIS, that's your HR software package. And we've got some that are still stuck in the dark ages. And I'm sorry, but you are. If you listen to this, I'm sorry about that. But we do. And there's those that are fit in between. So that are still gradually moving across to the ecosystem, so to speak, as we get there. And we do have clients that do spend a particular day of the week in the evenings, afternoons. They actually have it allocated in their diary that they're going to spend dealing with these different bits and pieces, getting up together on annual leave, getting their rotas ready together, updated, whether it's chasing up on sickness and other bits and pieces and trying to get that recorded, sending stuff and bits and pieces through to their accountant for their payroll. All these bits and pieces is what they're focusing on and spending quite a lot of their time doing. And there are easier ways to do it. And, you know, when you're spending a lot of your time on these little functions, and just remember for a minute, we're talking small businesses here. So the high likelihood is there's more than one functionality or role falling on one person's head, whether that be you, whether it be your colleague, your partner, whoever it may be. You're probably wearing multiple different hats in your business. So you might be doing the HR, you might be doing the CEO, you might be doing the marketing, you might even be doing the ops management and the finance all at one go. So when you have these elements that you're actually having to diarize and soak up time to do, it can take up so much time. And what I want to get onto in a minute later on down in this video is examples of exactly how some crazy situations, and some of you will listen to it and go, that can't possibly be the case, Mike, but believe you me, I promise you it is. That just really easy wins that take a lot of pressure off of you and make your lives so much easier. And I also want to give some tidbits on this because there is a wide market out there and there's not a lot to tell between them. But I want to go through who we partner with, how that works, and why we partner with them, to be quite honest with you. But time spent on spreadsheets, it's time not spent on your strategy. It's not spent on your clients. It's not spent on what you're meant to be providing. It's not spent on the things that make a difference in your business. So we're very big on productivity. I'm very big on performance and output levels. I want value for money from every asset within my organization. And quite frankly, if it's not increasing flow and productivity and performance and income and profits in my business, then it's probably a liability, and that's a problem. I want assets, not liabilities, and that comes true even with my staff. Not what we're talking about today, though. But it does come down to these things with you. If you're spending your time in all the wrong areas, no wonder you're not moving your business forward. There was a person on a podcast I listened to. I can't remember for the life of me their name. But one of the things they pointed out was at the very early doors of starting their business, they thought they had to spend their time on all these gazillion different things, when realistically, they were probably procrastinating. And when they got a bit of advice from somebody who'd been round the neck of the woods quite a number of years working in business, they realized, they said to them, well, what's the key thing that's going to make a difference to your business? And that was getting in more clients and more revenue into their organization at that point in time. I think that would apply to most businesses most of the time, to be honest with you. And then they asked them, well, how much time are you actually spending on that process? How much time are you actually spending on resourcing more clients and getting more clients? What is it you're spending your time on? And the answer to that was shockingly low. They were spending a lot of their time, their capital, on things that weren't moving the dial in their business. And we do that for all of our staff as well as ourselves. We're not immune to that. And I would say if you're spending a lot of your time on unnecessary things that you don't need to spend your time on, it's time badly spent that's costing you money. Even though it's you that's doing it, it's costing you from being able to spend that time on the things that are going to move that dial. And that's why this is so fundamentally important. And what I want to do right now is look at 6 ways that HRIS or HR information systems are going to be able to help you. So the first one is managing employee absence effectively. So we had a client that just by virtue of not being able to see it, by virtue of not really, they had an understanding, they had a thought process, there was a problem with staff sickness absence, but they weren't really articulating that in terms of record keeping, which sounds bonkers, by the way. For me personally, I don't know, you may disagree with me, of course, it's all up to you to decide from where you're sitting. But at the end of the day, that seemed crazy, that people are taking a lot of sickness absence, but you don't really know the extent of the problem. And that situation is quite severe, because you don't really know that absence is costing you money in your business as a starting place. You don't know how much that's costing you. You don't know how many hours you're losing in your organization. You don't know how long people are being off. You're not really able to give support to people, which is the flip side to that, in terms of being able to help and support individuals back to work, to stay back at work, to reduce levels of absence and increase levels of attendance. You don't really understand what the problem is, and still until you start recording that, which is the same thing I speak about when it comes to productivity and performance, bizarrely enough, right? So in this case and scenario, you can see that this person understands there's probably a problem. They're not silly. They're not living in some kind of cuckoo wonderland. They could see there was a problem with sickness absence. They just couldn't articulate what that problem looked like, how big of a problem it was. When they're able to articulate that, we're able to then come on board and tackle that problem. We can see that that's actually a significant issue within their business, and it's something that absolutely needs to be tackled head on, because there's a culture that starts to develop that people can do that. You can take that sickness absence and it almost becomes a culture where you can add it onto your annual leave. I'll never forget when I started out in HR, I was working in quite a big NHS trust. I won't say which one, but I was working in quite a big NHS trust, and we were just launching a brand new sickness absence management policy, and wet behind the ears a little bit, naive for sure. I thought this was amazing. Just out of university, this sounds cracking. It's everything I've been studying about. And you start to realize that the law is black and white. The majority of the spaces that we operate in as owners, as HR practitioners, indeed, is in the grey area. It's in that weird, murky area. And I'll never forget, on my way to do a presentation about the launch of that policy in that trust, I was still pretty much unknown in the organization at that point in time. Walking through the corridors and up the stairs, I went past a couple of nurses, and those nurses were having a conversation about how much annual leave they have and then how much sickness leave they have. And when you add it together, this is how much total leave I've got, which is completely counterproductive to everything that policy is meant to achieve. In that instant, I knew that's the grey area. That's the area. I mean, that took me aback because I hadn't considered that. People are starting to look at this policy and they're starting to see how much absence they can get before such times they go through any informal or formal process and add that to their annual leave. And that's the complete opposite to what we want to do. And if you don't have a grip on these things like this, that's the culture you start to breed. That's not the culture you probably want in your business. So that's really important to measure that. The second one is it handles holiday requests with ease. I mean, the amount of times I get clients where they're getting emails from staff that they want to take leave, and it's all in emails, and somewhere within their inbox is this audit trail of all these requests. And it's not kept up anywhere. The amount of times that clients are having to sift through that in some kind of afternoon or evening in that pocket of time is another a big issue as well. But we had a manufacturing client who was actually starting to not keep a record and tally of that in that exact scenario. It was coming through their email inbox and it was clashing with work that was scheduled to go out. So they were experiencing delays with delivery, with products going out to their clients that they'd ordered because they had people that they thought were going to be there that then transpired to not be there. And it wasn't that they were absent or done anything wrong. They'd had leave, it was approved, but there was nothing to track it and trace it, or even to correlate whether taking leave at that particular point is going to have an impact on the delivery and output to this particular client in this particular way. Having an app where someone can do that, request their leave, you can approve that leave, and you can even run a report like that, really easy, so you can see where people are and how that's working. You can diarize that, you can do whatever you want with that. You can even go onto the app itself and look at a calendar of leave and see how that cross correlates with work schedules and other things that are happening, projects that are taking place. It's that simple to kind of just knock that problem out straight away. That's an easy one to kind of avoid. And that's one of the great things these systems do. It's all in one place in that sense of things. You can track leave that's carried over, you can track sickness leave, there's just so much there, and you can run the reports on all of that data. So you've got it to hand in an instant when you need it. You're not trawling through your emails trying to find John's request for annual leave over the past year. It's not happening, okay? The other one is it stores all the files. This one, by the way, is going to boggle your mind. It did to me. It's going to store all your employee files securely in one place. It is their personnel file. So back in the day, I remember when I started working in HR, we had rows of filing cabinets. In a big organization I worked in, rows of filing cabinets, and those filing cabinets had personnel files in. And the crazy thing was, those weren't the only versions of those personnel files, because that was just the ones in HR. You also then had the manager who would also have their own one too. So you'd have multiples personnel files. Why? That's just the way it was back then, but that's the way it works. Well, some people in some businesses are still stuck in those days. So we definitely have had that. So we had an individual client who had a subject access request. If any of you had one of these before, by the way, you can understand how painful a subject access request is, even when you have all of the files electronically. If you don't have them electronically, just imagine how hard their life was in trying to get this resolved and sorted out. I mean, back in the day, what would happen is a person can say, I would like to have access and view my personnel folder. And you'd have to give them a day ahead in the future so you can get the file ready for them to come and view. And then you'd sit down, you'd have a whole meeting with them just so they can view their file. And then you put it back away in the filing cabinet. This is the same situation this particular client was going through. They still had all of their personnel folders in paper format, in a filing cabinet. So when a subject access request came in, not only was it not electronic, they had to scan the documents, they had to go through the documents and make sure all the things were there. It took them days to get that sorted and resolved, and it could have been done in minutes. Because if it's all on the system that you're using, and by the way, these systems are, with all these systems, all systems are like this, they're as good as the data you put in there. The information you get out is as good as the data you put in. If you don't upload data and records onto your HRIS, then you're going to be stuck in the same situation. It's not going to solve it. But if you do store the information there and you work your way through doing that, it makes your life so much easier because individuals have access to that wherever they are, whenever they want. So imagine this, one of the great moves that happened within the NHS was employee records, was patient records. So now, if you haven't already, by the way, I'm breaking earth-shattering news, you can have an NHS app on your phone. You can access your records around your health, appointments, medications, and everything all in one place. And it makes life so much easier rather than thinking I've got to go in to get access to the information from my doctor and GP. Well, now you can do that in your business as well. And it makes life so much easier. And it also puts and shares that burden on the individual to make sure that the data that's held on there about them, such as their name, maiden name, address, and all the rest of those bits and pieces, is up to date and is accurate. It's not just on you. You can ensure and ask people to make sure that the data on there is accurate to them. The fourth one is it helps to actually streamline payroll. Bizarrely enough, it does, depending on the platform you're using and depending on how that interrelates to your platform on payroll, or whether they're the same, because that does happen as well. So we had a client who was spending, I think it was about 2 to 3 days a month in terms of just working through their payroll from when people were working, their rota and annual leave, to work through things such as tips, where they would apply, and all those different bits and pieces. This is going back a little bit now, but it took them days every single month to work through that, to send that to their accountant. And that's because it was in, I think it was in multiple different places where they were keeping that. They wasn't on one, even on one spreadsheet back then. They were in multiple different places within that process. And they were going through so many other issues in their business. I mean, they really, really were. This was just one of the things they could have just done without having a problem with. If you can have a place where you can also store your payroll information, or a place where you can easily export data from about records of rotas, records of annual leave that's been taken, sickness that's happened and occurred, maternity, and all those other bits and pieces, and you can just download that in an instant into a report and send that to your payroll, to your accountant, or link the two together, just makes your life so much easier. It just eliminates days of endless work that's unnecessary. So if you're still stuck in that situation scenario, definitely consider an HR information system. The fifth one is it informs and gives you the ability to make better decisions based on data. Again, if you've been with me, if you've listened to me, or if you work with us, you will know this is really, really important. I want to make decisions in my business based on good data. I want to be able to make decisions based on good data. If I'm making strategical decisions for the direction of my business, I want to be able to do that based on good information, not on the fly. So when it comes to things such as performance, productivity, if I'm wanting to link our strategy and goals to somebody and see how that is going, have I even got the right goals? Have I even set up and aligned ourselves to the right things? This is going to be really crucially important, because you can store information on there about, for example, looking at performance, productivity, your one-to-ones, your appraisals. You can store that information on there, and we use that as part of our productivity business. And we definitely want people to do that because it gives you data back, and it means that it's easily available and reportable to outline into what we do. We call it the schools on the doors moment, where we start looking at the data of what is occurring within your organization. And we can then start to pinpoint where those problems are, where they lie. It makes them more obvious. It can give you those red flags in an instant as to where you want to pay your time and attention. So we had an agency that was working with us. They were actually losing talent. And this comes to the crux of some of the other problems that we've spoken about, which is, where do you spend most of your attention with your staff? Most of it, by virtue, it's just one of the things that happens, is spent where you've got the problem. The problem is those with the poor performance. It means that those that are actually your shining stars, that are doing really good and excellent work, they're not the ones getting and absorbing that attention. Really, you need to be able to give something back to them. And what we tend to do is, by being a great and excellent employee and being good at your job, you get the work that the poor people couldn't do. So you end up getting more work, more of a burden, and actually taking you closer to that failure point, that break point that people get to, where it's just too much, and we don't actually look at that. We don't realize that. We just think and assume because they're good, they can just absorb it and take it. And you end up losing people because, like I've always said, it is hard, if not very close to being impossible, to keep good, talented, high-performing staff in a culture that doesn't give high performance. Yeah. When you're in that situation, it's hard to keep those people. If you have that data and you can measure that data, you can make sure that you can pinpoint where you need your attention in terms of helping to increase performance of staff. You can also pinpoint how you can give benefits and focus and give attention to those that are your shining stars. So you aren't actually just ignoring them or forgetting that they're there and just taking them for granted. So those are another one of the big things that you get from this. And the last one is that it enables employee self-service. So like I spoke about earlier on, there can be lots of things that interrupt with how things work, such as, the person's name's wrong. We've been sending out letters to somebody, but the address was incorrect that we had on the system. And it enables employees to have a level of self-service. They can update their information on there. They can make sure the records are accurate. They can actually ask questions and get feedback quicker through those particular mechanisms potentially as well, depending on the system you're working with. So it helps to actually alleviate those kind of questions coming back. For example, how much annual leave do I have left? Again, if you've got it all in the emails, answering that question is going to be difficult. And it's going to take time to come back and answer it. So having an employee self-service process is really worth its weight in gold and takes the pressure off of you. So moving on, what this means for you is that you can actually save time that you're spending in areas that you don't need to spend your time, and move it to the things you really do. So we've had clients that have saved, upwards of 12 hours a week potentially. That's 624 hours in a year through using an HR information system. And yeah, absolutely, that's probably one of your worst case scenarios that you can look at that's going to save that volume of time. And for sure, those would be one of those elements and one of those organizations that I've spoken about where they're on other end of the spectrum, where a lot of the things are still stuck in what I would call like a dark ages process. Sorry, but that's true for where it is. And the reason I bring it up like that is because it doesn't need to be. It's unnecessary. So what would you do with that time that you could get back in your business through those processes? Are you using a HR information system, but you're not sure you're getting the most out of it? Are you with us and you're using an HR information system and you're not sure you're getting as much out of it as you should be? These are all things we want to consider and come back on. And if you have questions on those, by the way, clients, not clients, anybody, come forward and let us know. It costs nothing to have a chat. So stop drowning in the people admin stuff. Stop being surrounded by paperwork, and let's try and see how we can help you to better utilize that time in your business in other areas. So in the link below, if you're watching us on the podcast or listening to us on the podcast and watching us on YouTube, click the link below in the description, and obviously you'll be able to come through and be able to book a call with us as well. That'd be fantastic. If you are watching us on the article, just click at the link at the bottom of the article and book a call with us. Ask us a question, not a problem whatsoever, and it only takes a couple of minutes to go through that and give you some practical steps and advice. No pressure in that whatsoever, and see how we can help and support you. It's been a pleasure. Take care. I'll see you soon.